Here we are again. It's lockdown. We're sitting here on Zoom, and you're watching me preach a pre-recorded sermon that I'm doing a day before. And now I'm awkwardly pacing around the church so I don't have to listen to myself speak. Guys, I hate being online. I hope that everybody knows how much I hate this. How much I hate doing this. But it's just the reality of our situation. It's lockdown. It's where we're at. So we're going to kind of put a halt until next week on our values talk. We're going to do our next value next week. This week we're just kind of, because I'm not really sure who's going to come. I'm not sure who's really going to hear this, but there's an important message that I believe that we need to talk about at this time. And so the question is this. It's lockdown again. No more school. You're locked in your house. How are you coping? That's the question. How are you coping? Now, that's a question that's more than just how are you doing? Okay? I'm not just asking you, hey, Ethan, how are you doing? Hey, Abby, how are you doing? I'm actually asking you, what are you doing in this time to cope? What is your coping mechanism? See, me when I was your age, and still to this day, but it seemed worse when I was your age. I'm a classic procrastinator. I would just leave everything to the last minute. There would be nothing that I would do on time. It was just last minute or 5 minutes late. That was my go-to. That's how I coped. Stress, that's how I coped. I just didn't deal with it, at least not right away. So that's how I coped. That was my coping mechanism when I was your age. Well, that and I learned how to play the drums, so anytime I was frustrated or every time I was upset, I would just beat the living heck out of my drums. I would just go in my basement and beat the living crap out of them. That was how I coped. Now, guys, there's so many things to cope with today. Right now, here, 2021, we're 1 year into this lockdown thing. There's so many things to cope with in regards to the global pandemic. Whether you agree with it, whether you don't agree with it, again, I don't preach politics from here, right? Bottom line is, no matter what your politics are on it, there's a lot to cope with. A lot of new guidelines, constant lockdowns. There's a lot of stuff to cope in the media. We just had a verdict passed down for the George Floyd murders. People have to cope with that, whether they cope well with that, they cope not well with that. There's lots of civil unrest. There's still people. There's somebody being shot every day in the United States, apparently. Guys, there's a lot to cope with. So, let me ask you again. How are you coping? What are you doing to cope? Are you, like me, are you a procrastinator? Are you putting everything off? Are you burying it? Are you avoiding it? Or are you just going to sleep all day and avoiding everything? Are you escaping into something else? Are you finding yourself just putting everything off? Putting everything off and ignoring it. But here's the problem, guys. When we cope in ways that aren't healthy, when we cope in ways that God hasn't ordained for us, or if we're leaning into things that don't actually help us and make us more healthy, coping causes us more stress. Because ignoring something doesn't make it go away. You can't just ignore the global pandemic. It's not going anywhere. You can't just ignore civil unrest and social injustice. It's not going away. So how do you do to cope? So of course, as we always do in this group, we're going to look at what the Bible says about coping. And we're going to look into a book written by an author. Most scholars agree it's Jeremiah, so I'm going to refer to him as Jeremiah. Don't take that as like gospel truth or anything like that. You may have read something where it's somebody else other than Jeremiah. Most scholars agree it's Jeremiah. So I'm just going to refer to it as Jeremiah for the sake of ease. We're going to look at his Old Testament book, Lamentations. A book that knows something about what it means to cope, what it means to have fear, what it means to deal with a difficult situation. To lament means to have grief or mourn over something. To mourn, to grief, to feel sad. So now Jeremiah, when he wrote this book, the reason that he wrote this book was he'd actually witnessed the destruction, the utter demolition of Jerusalem, his home, his people. Many were dead. So many were dead. And the ones who weren't were homeless, or they were injured, or they were starving to death. That sounds pretty bad. That honestly, obviously sounds much worse than what we're going through. That sounds worse than a global pandemic. It sounds so much worse. And yet, we're going to read in this passage how Jeremiah dealt with it. So we're looking at Lamentations chapter 3, verse 19 to verse 23. And this is what the word says. The thought of my suffering and homelessness is bitter beyond words. I will never forget this awful time as I grieve over my loss. Yet I still dare to hope when I remember this. The faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. Great is his faithfulness. His mercies begin afresh each morning. The phrase that really catches me off guard at first there is this one. He was bitter beyond words. I don't know about you guys, but I feel bitter often. Bitterness is a thing that I'm prone to feel. That I feel honestly kind of biologically bent towards is bitterness. I get bitter easily. And it's hard for that bitterness to kind of go away, right? So the last time I can remember having this type of bitterness was when a few months ago when we almost had to move. It was like this poison bitterness in our house. Myself and Andrew Smythe and Riley, we were all feeding each other off the bitterness, and we were mad and we were hurt and we were stressed and we were nervous and we were bitter beyond words. I can't be the only one who's ever felt like that. Do you feel bitter? Do you know what I mean by bitterness? That it's not just anger, it's not just jealousy, it's you're just broken against something. This is what Jeremiah says. He says, I'm bitter beyond words. And then he goes on to say this, which is just incredible. He says, he will never forget this awful time. Guys, I don't know about you, but like this time, this moment in history, 2020, or obviously most of 2021, maybe even 2022 or beyond, I'm never going to forget this time. I'm never going to forget 2020. What a year that was. The ups, the downs, the everything, guys. I'm never going to forget this time, and I don't think you guys are either. Seniors, you might lose your graduation year, just like students did last year. Students who graduated last year are going to go off to university, and there's no campuses open. Sometimes they are, but not very many. I know Riley's been online all year. She'll probably be online next year. There's many people who started a 2-year program who will never see the inside of a classroom, never meet one of their fellow students face to face. I think this is a time we're going to remember. And that's what Jeremiah says. He says, I'm never going to forget this time. Now, I want you to notice something about this passage. Something really important. Jeremiah does not downplay his pain. Okay? He does not push it aside. He does not minimize it. He doesn't try to soldier through it fakely. Now, is that something you do? I know I know people who do this. And I do it every once in a while, but I'm also very honest with my feelings, and I'll tell people. But do you do this? Somebody comes up to you and you're very much not fine. Things are not okay and things are looking real grim in your life. And somebody goes, hey, how are you doing? And you go, oh, I'm fine. Oh, I'm good. Things are laughing. I'm living the dream. Guys, Jeremiah doesn't deflect. Jeremiah doesn't run away. Jeremiah doesn't run away from it. Jeremiah calls it out. He doesn't downplay. He's not pretending. He's not sugarcoating. Guys, to quote a few weeks ago when we were doing the series on feelings, he names how he's feeling. He's feeling bitter. He's feeling lost. He wrote it all in a book called Lamentations. He's calling it what it is. He is grieving. He is mourning for his nation, for his people. He names it. He doesn't downplay it. We see in this passage, Jeremiah makes 2 incredibly important choices. Number one, like we were just talking about, he chose to be honest about his feelings. When somebody asks you how you are and you're not okay, you have a choice to make in that moment. You have a choice. I'm either going to be honest about my feelings and tell the person, yeah, I'm hurting right now. Things are a little sore. Things are tough. Things aren't looking so good for me. Or you choose to say, oh, I'm fine. Everything's okay. Don't worry about me. I'm just trucking on. Everything's fine. Jeremiah chose to be honest about his feelings. And number two, and maybe more importantly, he chose to see the faithfulness in God at that moment. He chose. He switches gears at the end of this passage, doesn't he? At first, he's like, I am bitter. I'm never going to forget this. This is the worst time of my life. This is horrible. But God is faithful. His mercies are new every morning. And that is the hope. That is the hope that pushes him forward. It's not the hope that erases all his pain. It's not the hope that makes every problem that he has go away. It's the hope that pushes him forward. It's why he gets out of bed in the morning. It's why he's able to look at the death and the destruction and the starvation, and he's able to move past it, and he's able to be bigger than it. It's God, and it's his hope. It's this hope that pushes him forward. Guys, we will honestly often do anything to not feel our feelings. We'll do anything. We'll sleep it off. We'll eat it off. We'll not eat it off. We'll drink or we'll do drugs. Whatever it is that just numbs the pain inside of us, we'll do anything not to feel. And Jeremiah shows the opposite. He shows a willingness to feel. He shows a willingness to put himself out there and talk about how he feels. And I would suggest, and I think the Bible here suggests, that only when we feel, when we truly are honest with God about how we're feeling about the situation, only then will we see the hope. Will we fully feel that hope? Will we fully understand what it means to hope in God when we've got nothing left? We have to feel our feelings. We cannot forsake our feelings. But guys, here's the trick. You can't stay there. If you feel your feelings too deeply, you'll wallow and you'll destroy yourself. Guys, this is something that we need to understand. And it's harder in North America. It's harder in the Western world because, quite frankly, even the poorest among us are incredibly rich. But sometimes all we have is the promise of God. Sometimes all we can look forward to is the promise of God. Sometimes the only thing we can push towards is the promise of God. And this is what the passage says. I'll read it for you again. This is what Jeremiah says. This is the hope that his life is built on. The faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. Great is his faithfulness. His mercies begin afresh each morning. Guys, every day is a new start, a new chance to make a new choice about how you're going to cope with your feelings. Maybe you messed up yesterday. Maybe the last 3 weeks have been absolute garbage. But today, God's mercies are new and you can cope in a new way. And we cope as we make a choice to stand in the firm hope that is God. Guys, this doesn't make your pain go away. In fact, when your pain is new, so is the faithfulness of God. That's what this passage is telling you. When you feel a new pain, God feels new love. His mercies are new each morning. I don't know about you, but a lot of my sin used to happen at night. When the sun was down and I was alone. That is such a comfort to know in that moment that his mercies, every morning when that sun comes up, his mercies are new. His love is new. My pain may be new, but his mercies are also new. That's so important. It's so important to know that. Every morning, his mercies are new. Now, am I telling you that everything you're doing to cope is wrong? Am I telling you that relaxing with some Netflix is wrong or eating a tub of ice cream? No, I'm not here to tell you that any of those things are inherently incorrect. Yes, take a nap, relax yourself, relax your brain, Watch some Netflix to blow off some steam. Have some ice cream. Do whatever you want. Play some video games. Go shoot some Do people still play Nazi zombies? I don't know. But either way, go shoot some Nazi zombies, because that's what I used to do. I'm not telling you to stop doing those things. But we need to understand that those things are patches. That they're band-aids on the festering wounds of our soul. And what happens if you put a band-aid on a wound that needs stitches? It's not going to heal. It's not going to go away. Yes, it'll stop some of the bleeding. Yes, it's certainly good in the short term. You wrap it with some gauze and you kind of get on with life for a little bit. But eventually you're going to have to go to the hospital and get some freaking stitches. You can't put a band-aid on a stitching cut. It's not going to work. And so we need to learn how to lament. We need to learn how to heal correctly. And number one is lamenting. It's telling God how you feel. It's feeling your feelings. Like we talked about a few weeks ago, it's naming them, being powerful over your feelings, not allowing them to control you. Don't act like it's not a big deal. Guys, and I'm talking to the men. Not that women don't struggle with this, okay? But guys, believe me, I'm a men's small group leader. It's hard for men to feel their feelings. They try to act like nothing hurts them. They try to act like they're bulletproof. Don't act like it's no big deal. Feel your feelings, name them, talk to God about them, journal them, have a good shout, have a good cry. Whatever you have to do, talk to God, lament. God can handle your honesty. Do you really think that the God who knows everything that you do, everything that you say, everything that you feel, everything that you think he can't handle your honesty? He can. He knows it already. Talk to him about it. Get it from here out there. Cast your worries onto God. For he is the one that comforts. Number one, guys, the true way to heal is to lament. And then, number two, we have to name the hope. We have to name the hope. Just like we have to name the feelings, just like we have to feel the feelings, we have to also name our God who saves, our God who heals, our God who is our true coping mechanism. Because a bad day, a bad month, a bad year, whatever it is, it doesn't mean it's a bad life. It's a season, and you're walking through it. And God will carry you through. There was this monk I heard. I was watching. Okay, that's a weird way to start. It sounds like I'm starting a joke. I was listening to KFN one morning, and the I can't remember his name. The Focus on the Family guy. He was telling this story about a monk who every single morning he would get up and he would open to a random book of Psalms. And he'd pray that song over and over and over and over and over and over again until he felt it. He said sometimes it took him 5 minutes, sometimes he woke up in a particularly praiseful mood, and other times it took him an hour. But he would do it again and again and again and again until he felt the praise, the joy, the peace that he felt in the song. And guys, we need to name our hope. Lord, our hope is in you. Lord, our hope is in you. God, I am so hurt right now. God, I am in so much pain right now, but only you can heal me, Lord. You are my hope. You are my salvation. You are the one who heals and saves and comforts. He is the Lord of all comfort. And do that again and again and again and again until your heart feels it. Because God is the hope that we need to move forward. Just like Jeremiah, bitter beyond words, never forgetting a day, in so much pain, his homelessness, his starvation, everything is bearing down on him, and yet, Lord, your faithfulness is new each morning. And I know sometimes it's not the most comfortable thing. I know it's not always the easiest way. I know that sometimes it feels like God is a million miles away. And that if you hear one more person tell you to just pray about it, you're gonna rip your hair out of your skull. Guys, I know that's frustrating. But we need to remember that it is the truth. That God is our hope. So what are you using to turn it off? What are you using in your life to turn off the emotion, to not feel your feelings, to get over it? Maybe it's social media. Maybe you're pouring yourself into a new hobby on social media, or posting new pics on Instagram, being an Instagram photographer or something. Maybe you're just on the video games all day long. Whatever it is, you're socking dingers in the show, or you're draining trays, or you're killing Nazi zombies or something. That's where you pour yourself. That's where you are all day, because it doesn't hurt when you're there. Maybe you sleep it all away. Maybe you just sleep 18 hours a day and you get up for school and that's it. You nap the rest of the day. You get up for a little bit. You have dinner with your family. You go back to sleep. Maybe that's your whole life, because you know what? You don't feel it when you're asleep. Maybe you eat it like I do. Maybe you eat your feelings like I do. Maybe you don't eat. Whatever it is, when these things are used improperly, who knows that social media can be an incredible tool, and that video games are super fun, and that sleeping is important, and eating is equally as important. And you know what? Fasting for the Lord is important. When these things are used improperly, when they're used as your sole coping mechanism, they don't work. They're Band-Aids on a wound that needs stitches. It's just going to bleed through, and you're going to need to put another Band-Aid on, and another Band-Aid on, and another Band-Aid. It's not going to fix anything. They don't work. Maybe that's what you're doing to cope. Maybe you're not just numbing, but you're actively hurting. Maybe instead of just numbing the pain with Netflix or social media, maybe you're doing something a little bit more destructive and something a little bit more harmful to you. I'm going to get just a little bit raw here, just a little bit personal. Maybe you've turned to self-harm. Maybe you've just tried to feel a different kind of pain so that the pain you feel doesn't feel so real. Maybe you've turned to drugs or alcohol. Maybe you've turned to pornography. Maybe you've turned to some other thing that only you know about, some secret thing that you wouldn't, that gives you something that only you know about. Guys, you're not just numbing at that point. You're not just avoiding. You're not just procrastinating the pain. You're actively hurting yourself. And that's not something that we want in this group. We want to be there for you in your pain. We don't want you to suffer in silence. We want you to come forward to your small group leaders. We want you to come out to a trusted friend or something and seek the help that you need. Because you need to know that this additional pain that you're creating, it doesn't make the other pain go away. It doesn't erase the other pain. You're just creating a whole new pain. And guys, you need to know that we have your back on that. That there's nothing that you could tell us, that you could say to us, that you could reveal to us, that you could tell us you're struggling with, that we won't walk with you through. So if you've gone beyond numbing, and you're actively hurting, talk to us. Talk to a trusted friend. Talk to a leader. Talk to your parents. Talk to a counselor. Talk to your lead pastor if you have one. Talk to me. Maybe it was never meant to be long term. Maybe it was just something you said, oh, I just need this for a second. It just makes you feel something. And you're stuck in it. Guys, we can help. Maybe you're worried about judgment. Maybe you're worried about appearing weak. We don't care. We won't judge you. You're not weak. We've walked through it. Many of us leaders have already walked through much of the stuff that you're going to be going through, and we're going to get you through it. What are you coping with? And when you're ready, share. When you're ready, share with us. And remember, of course, that you're not alone. And that goes for everybody. That goes for the numbers. That goes for the people who are doing okay. That goes for the people who are really hurting. That goes for your leaders. That goes for your parents. That goes for your pastors. That goes for the freaking Pope at the Vatican. You are not alone. You are not alone. Period. We're not alone in this earth. We have each other. We have this group. Even though we're online, the focus is going to be small groups moving forward from this week. So you'll have your small group at the very least. But you're not alone on this earth. God put so many people in your life to help you get through this. And then, of course, he gave you his Son and the Holy Spirit that resides in you to give you counsel, to give you advice, to give you comfort, to give you joy. You're not alone, even in the spiritual aspect of things. God is with you. He walks with you. He died for you, and he loves you so much. So that's what we're going to talk about in our small groups today. We're going to talk about how we're coping. We're going to talk about how we're doing. We're going to talk about the real stuff. This lockdown has been a blow to me personally. It was hard getting that email that they were shutting things down again when I thought we'd been spared, when I thought I was going to have this youth group. Guys, you don't know how important this is to me. Just on a mental, spiritual level, to get out of my freaking house and come and minister and hang out with you guys every week and hang out with these leaders. But we can't escape what we feel. And we try to. We cope. We cope in all the wrong ways instead of, like Jeremiah, calling out on the name of God and saying, God, we love you. God, we need you. God, your faithfulness is new every day. And I'm not saying that'll make all your problems go away. I'm not here to give you some magical cure to your sadness, to your depression, to your mourning, to your loneliness, but God is with you. And I know that if we begin to name that hope, to name the hope that we have in Jesus, even if it doesn't make us feel better right away, when we name that hope, something happens. Name the hope, find a trusted person to walk out this life with, and move forward. You just have to keep moving. Because God will carry us through this season. God will move with us, and God will move in spite of us. And I want to be right next to God when he moves. So let's begin to move forward in our small groups tonight, okay? We love you. I love you. God loves you. And we're going to get through this thing together, okay? All right. That's a great way to end a sermon, right? Right?